The text message that destroyed my marriage arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't supposed to see it, but Julia's phone buzzed on the nightstand while she slept peacefully beside me, completely unaware that her secret was about to explode in both our faces. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow, Brandon. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My blood turned to ice water as I stared at those 8 words glowing on her screen. Brandon Chase, her boss. The same pompous CEO who'd shaken my hand at the company Christmas party just 3 months ago, telling me what a lucky man I was to have Julia. Yeah, real lucky. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling with rage. Julia stirred beside me, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like a golden halo. How perfectly ironic. My angel was sleeping with the devil, and I'd been too blind to see it. The signs had been there for months, late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, new lingerie that never seemed to make an appearance in our bedroom, the way she'd started criticizing everything about me, my job in IT, my clothes, my lack of ambition. "You're not going anywhere, Max," she'd said just last week during one of our increasingly frequent arguments. "Brandon says men like you are a dime a dozen," Brandon says. It all made sense now. I slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, my mind racing. 20 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. My wife was screwing her boss, probably planning to leave me for his money and status, while I played the role of the oblivious husband. But Max Harper wasn't as oblivious as everyone thought. The next morning, Julia bounced into the kitchen like a teenager, humming some pop song while she made her coffee. She was practically glowing, and I knew it wasn't because of me. "Good morning, honey," she chirped, not even looking in my direction. "I'll be late again tonight. Big presentation for the board." "Another one?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That's the 3rd this week." She finally glanced at me, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Annoyance? It's a crucial time for the company, Max. Some of us actually care about advancing our careers. There it was, the subtle dig, the implication that I was some kind of failure because I'd chosen stability over corporate ladder climbing. "Right," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "Well, good luck with your presentation." After she left, I sat in our pristine kitchen, surrounded by the Instagram-perfect decor Julia had insisted on. Everything was white and chrome and cold, just like our marriage had become. I felt like a stranger in my own home. My phone buzzed. Pete, my best friend and the owner of Murphy's Bar downtown. "Lunch today? You sound like you need a drink." He wasn't wrong. I met Pete at his bar around noon. The place was mostly empty except for a few regulars nursing their liquid lunches. Pete took one look at my face and poured me a whiskey without being asked. "All right, spill it," he said, leaning against the bar. "You look like someone ran over your dog." "Julia's having an affair," I said quietly. Pete's eyebrows shot up. "Jesus, Max, are you sure?" I told him about the text message, about all the signs I'd been ignoring. Pete listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my glass. "Brandon Chase," he said finally. "Yeah, I know that name. Real piece of work from what I hear. Thinks he's God's gift to corporate America." "You know him?" "Not personally, but his type comes in here sometimes. Rich guys slumming it, thinking they're better than everyone else." Pete wiped down a glass thoughtfully. "I've heard stories about him and his extracurricular activities." "What kind of stories?" "The kind where he's got a reputation for sleeping with his employees, married ones especially. Apparently he gets off on the power trip." My stomach churned. Julia wasn't Brandon's first conquest, and she probably wouldn't be his last. She was just another notch on his executive bedpost. "What are you going to do?" Pete asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not going down without a fight." That evening, I waited for Julia to come home from her presentation. She walked in at nearly midnight, her hair slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. She claimed she'd grabbed dinner with the team after their meeting ran long. "How did it go?" I asked from the couch. "Great," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Really great. Brandon was very impressed with my performance." I bet he was. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Julia's behavior became even more suspicious. She'd disappear into the bathroom with her phone for 20-minute calls from Monica. She started working out more, buying expensive new clothes, getting her hair done twice a week. The final piece of evidence came when I was doing laundry. Julia had left a blazer in the hamper, and when I picked it up, I caught a whiff of expensive cologne, not mine. And there, on the collar, was a smudge of lipstick in a shade Julia never wore. Burgundy. Deep, rich burgundy. That's when I decided to do some research on Brandon Chase. What I found was interesting. Married for 12 years to Teresa Tessa Chase, a former art gallery owner who'd given up her career when they moved to our city. No kids. Big house in the most exclusive neighborhood. And from the photos I found online, Tessa was stunning. Elegant, sophisticated, with an understated beauty that made Julia's flashy appearance seem cheap by comparison. More importantly, she looked lonely in every photo. Even when she was smiling at some charity gala or corporate event, her eyes seemed sad, like she knew exactly what kind of man she'd married. I wondered if she knew about Julia. The answer to my question came 3 days later in the form of a text message from an unknown number. Your wife and my husband. We need to talk. Cafe Luna tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone. Tessa. My heart hammered as I read the message. Tessa Chase knew. The question was, what did she want to do about it? Cafe Luna was a small, upscale coffee shop in the Arts District, the kind of place where people had quiet conversations about important things. I arrived early and chose a corner table where we could talk without being overheard. Tessa walked in exactly at 2 p.m., and I understood immediately why Brandon had married her. She was breathtaking, tall, and graceful, with dark hair pulled back in a simple chignon and wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. But it was her eyes that caught my attention. Intelligent, calculating, and filled with a cold fury that matched my own. She spotted me immediately and walked over with the confidence of someone who was used to being the most elegant person in any room. Max Harper, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I'm Tessa. Mrs. Chase, I replied, standing to shake her hand. Just Tessa, please. Mrs. Chase sounds so formal, and we're about to become very informal with each other. She sat down across from me, declining my offer to buy her coffee. For a moment, we just studied each other, two people whose lives had been blown apart by the same betrayal. How long have you known? I asked finally. About Julia, specifically? 2 weeks. About Brandon's affairs in general? Years. Her voice was calm, controlled, but I could hear the steel underneath. He's not as subtle as he thinks he is, especially when he starts buying jewelry that never makes it home to me. You've known for years and never said anything? Tessa's smile was razor sharp. I've been planning, Max. Waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity. Your wife just happened to provide both. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, sliding it across the table. Julia's not his first employee, and she won't be his last, but she might be his most expensive mistake. I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs. Brandon and Julia at restaurants, hotels, even in his office after hours. There were also printouts of credit card statements showing expensive gifts, hotel rooms, weekend trips that Julia had told me were work conferences. How did you get all this? I have my resources, Tessa said cryptically. The question is, what do we do with it? We? Oh yes, Max, we're in this together now. Your wife wants my husband, and my husband wants your wife, but neither of them is going to get what they want. Instead, they're going to lose everything. I leaned back in my chair, studying this woman who seemed to have materialized out of nowhere with a plan for revenge. What exactly are you proposing? Complete social and professional destruction, she said matter-of-factly. Brandon's built his reputation on being the perfect CEO, the family man, the pillar of the community. Julia's climbed the corporate ladder by playing the devoted wife who just happens to be brilliant at her job. What happens when everyone finds out the truth? They lose everything, I said slowly. Exactly. But it has to be done carefully, strategically. A whisper campaign won't work. It has to be undeniable, public, and devastating. I thought about Julia's smug confidence, her casual cruelty toward me, her obvious belief that she was trading up for a better life. Then I thought about Brandon Chase's arrogant handshake at the Christmas party, his condescending smile. What did you have in mind? Tessa's smile was beautiful and terrifying. The spring charity gala. 3 weeks from now. Everyone who matters in this city will be there. Board members, investors, social leaders, media. It's the perfect stage for a very public revelation. And how exactly do we reveal their affair at a charity gala without looking like the bitter, vengeful spouses? We don't reveal it, Tessa said. We let them reveal it themselves. She spent the next hour outlining her plan. It was elegant, ruthless, and completely legal. By the time she finished explaining, I was convinced that Tessa Chase was either a genius or a sociopath. Possibly both. There's one more thing, she said as we prepared to leave. For this to work, we need to appear to be moving on, happy, united. United how? We need to be seen together, Max. As a couple. Let people draw their own conclusions about why Brandon's wife and Julia's husband are suddenly spending time together. The implications hit me immediately. You want us to fake a relationship? I want us to have a real relationship, she said quietly. Even if it's temporary, even if it's just for revenge, because the best way to beat them is to show them that we're better off without them. As I watched her walk away, I realized that my quiet, predictable life was about to become very complicated, and for the first time in months, I was actually looking forward to something. The spring charity gala was held at the Riverside Country Club, the kind of place where old money went to see and be seen. I'd never been inside before. Julia and I weren't exactly country club material, but Tessa's invitation had gotten us past the velvet rope and into the world of the city's elite. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Tessa had insisted on taking me shopping for a proper tuxedo, claiming that my off-the-rack suit wouldn't pass muster. She'd been right, of course. The custom-tailored tux made me look like a different person. Confident, successful, dangerous. You clean up well, Tessa said when I picked her up at her mansion. She was wearing a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her curves perfectly, her dark hair swept up to show off diamond earrings that probably cost more than my car. You look incredible, I said honestly. Brandon's going to regret ever cheating on you. That's the idea. The country club was decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights, creating an atmosphere of elegant sophistication. As we walked into the ballroom, I could feel eyes turning toward us. Whispers followed in our wake. Is that Tessa Chase? Who's that man with her? That's not Brandon. Where is Brandon anyway? Tessa smiled serenely and guided me toward the bar. Phase 1 complete, she murmured. We're officially the most interesting people here. That's when I saw them. Julia and Brandon, standing near the silent auction tables, her hand possessively on his arm. Julia was wearing a red dress that was just a little too tight, a little too low-cut for the venue. She looked cheap next to the other women here, though she clearly thought she looked sophisticated. Brandon, on the other hand, looked every inch the successful CEO in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. But when he spotted Tessa and me across the room, his face went white. "Showtime," Tessa whispered. We approached them slowly, giving the other guests plenty of time to notice the tension building. Julia saw us first, her eyes widening in shock when she recognized me. "Max?" she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Julia," I said calmly. "You look interesting tonight." Brandon had recovered from his initial shock and was now staring at his wife with undisguised fury. "Tessa, what the hell is this?" "This is Max Harper," Tessa said smoothly. "My date for the evening. Max, I believe you know my husband, Brandon." The word husband dripped with disdain. Around us, conversations had stopped. People were openly staring now, sensing drama. "Your date?" Julia's voice rose an octave. "Max, have you lost your mind?" "On the contrary," I replied. "I think I'm finally seeing clearly." Brandon stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "I don't know what kind of game you two are playing, but—" "Game?" Tessa interrupted, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by the surrounding guests. "Oh, Brandon, this isn't a game. This is me moving on with my life, just like you've been moving on with yours." The implication was clear to everyone within earshot. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw several people pulling out their phones, no doubt texting the gossip to friends who weren't here. Julia's face was turning red. "Max, we need to talk, privately." "I don't think we have anything private to discuss anymore," I said. "After all, you've been sharing everything with Brandon here." That's when Julia made her first mistake. Instead of trying to defuse the situation, she went on the attack. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" she hissed. "Making a scene at a charity gala with this woman." "This woman," Tessa said coolly, "is Brandon's wife, though I suppose you've forgotten that detail." The crowd around us was growing larger. I spotted several board members from Brandon's company, their faces grim as they watched their CEO's personal life implode in public. Brandon grabbed Tessa's arm, his composure finally cracking. "We're leaving, now." "Take your hands off me," Tessa said, her voice deadly quiet. "You lost the right to touch me when you started touching your employees." The gasps from the crowd were audible now. Julia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You vindictive bitch," Brandon snarled. "You think you can destroy me. I'll ruin you first." That's when I stepped between them, my voice calm but carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "I'd be very careful about making threats, Brandon, especially when there are so many witnesses." For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. His fists were clenched, his face purple with rage. But then he seemed to remember where we were, who was watching. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Yes, it is," Tessa replied. "It's been over for a long time. I was just too polite to mention it." She turned to me, placing her hand on my arm. "Shall we go find our table, darling? I believe dinner is about to be served." As we walked away, leaving Julia and Brandon standing in the wreckage of their public humiliation, I could hear the buzz of conversation exploding behind us. By tomorrow morning, everyone in the city would know that Brandon Chase and Julia Harper were having an affair, and that their respective spouses had moved on. "That went well," Tessa said quietly as we found our assigned table. "Phase 2? I asked. "Phase 2. But as we sat down to dinner, I noticed something unexpected. The way Tessa's hand felt in mine, the genuine smile she gave me when I pulled out her chair, the spark of attraction that had nothing to do with revenge. Maybe this fake relationship was becoming more real than either of us had planned. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, the gossip had spread through the corporate world like wildfire. Brandon's company, Chase Industries, was buzzing with whispers and speculation. I knew this because I'd called in a favor with a friend who worked in their IT department. Marcus owed me from when I'd helped him fix a major server crash at his previous job, and he was happy to keep me informed about the chaos unfolding at Chase Industries. "It's insane here," Marcus told me over the phone. "The board called an emergency meeting this morning. Apparently some of the investors are asking questions about Brandon's leadership style and company culture." "What about Julia?" "HR is conducting a routine review of all recent promotions and raises. Funny how routine it seems when everyone knows she's been sleeping with the boss." I smiled grimly. Tessa's plan was working perfectly, but Brandon wasn't going down without a fight. That became clear when Julia came home that evening, her face red and blotchy from crying. "They suspended me," she sobbed. "Pending investigation. They're reviewing all my work, all my promotions, everything." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been researching divorce lawyers. "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" She stared at me in disbelief. "Max, they're trying to destroy my career, and it's all because of your little stunt with that woman." "That woman is Brandon's wife," I pointed out. "And I don't think our appearance together is what's destroying your career. I think sleeping with your married boss might have something to do with it." Julia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How do you know about the affair?" I finished. "I've known for weeks, Julia. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the new lingerie that never seemed to be for me. Did you really think I was that stupid?" She sank into a chair, her perfect facade finally cracking. "Max, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you've been screwing Brandon Chase for months while telling me I'm not ambitious enough? Can you explain why you've been planning to leave me for his money and status?" "It's not about money," she said weakly. "Really? Then what's it about? Love?" I laughed bitterly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you traded 20 years of marriage for a corner office and a sugar daddy." Julia's tears dried up, replaced by anger. "At least Brandon has ambition. At least he's going somewhere in life. You're content to stay in your little IT job, living in this mediocre house, being mediocre forever." "And yet," I said calmly, "I'm not the one who just got suspended from my job for sleeping with my boss." That night, Julia slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how drastically my life had changed in just a few weeks. My marriage was over, but strangely, I felt more alive than I had in years. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. "Coffee tomorrow? I have news." We met at the same cafe where we'd first plotted our revenge. Tessa looked tired but satisfied, like a cat who'd caught a particularly elusive mouse. "Brandon's in full panic mode," she reported. "He spent all night on the phone with lawyers and PR consultants trying to figure out how to salvage his reputation." "Any luck?" "None. The board is furious, the investors are nervous, and the employees are talking to reporters about the toxic work environment he's created." She sipped her coffee delicately. "Oh, and he's been cut from the country club's board of directors." "Ouch. It gets better. I had lunch with Patricia Whitmore yesterday. You know, the society columnist for the Tribune. She's writing a piece about power, privilege, and predatory behavior in corporate America. Guess who's going to be the featured case study?" I whistled low. "You don't mess around, do you?" 20 years of marriage to a serial cheater teaches you patience and strategy," Tessa said. "But the best part is yet to come." She reached into her purse and pulled out a legal document. "Divorce papers. I'm taking him for half of everything, plus alimony, plus damages for emotional distress caused by his infidelity." "Can you prove the infidelity?" Tessa's smile was razor sharp. "Remember those photos I showed you? I have dozens more, plus credit card records, hotel receipts, and witness statements from 3 other women he's had affairs with over the years." Jesus. Brandon built his fortune on his reputation as a family man and trustworthy leader. When that reputation is gone, so is his power. The board will force him out within a month. I stared at her with new respect. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? I've been preparing for it, she corrected. I knew eventually he'd push too far, get too careless, choose the wrong target. Julia was just the final straw. As we talked, I found myself studying Tessa's face, the way her eyes lit up when she smiled, the graceful way she moved her hands when she spoke. This woman was brilliant, beautiful, and absolutely ruthless when crossed. I was falling for her, and that terrified me. What happens after the divorce? I asked. I take my settlement and disappear for a while, maybe travel, maybe start a new gallery somewhere else. She looked at me carefully. What about you and Julia? It's over. I'm filing for divorce next week. Good, she said quietly. You deserve better than her. So do you. Better than Brandon, I mean. For a moment, something passed between us. A recognition, an understanding, a possibility neither of us was quite ready to name. Then Tessa's phone rang, breaking the spell. She glanced at the screen and smiled coldly. Speak of the devil. Brandon wants to discuss our situation like adults. She answered the call, putting it on speaker so I could hear. Tessa, we need to talk. Brandon's voice was strained, desperate. This has gone far enough. Has it? Tessa's voice was ice. Because from where I'm sitting, it's just getting started. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, the house, everything. Just call off your attack dogs. My attack dogs? Brandon, I haven't done anything except tell the truth. If that's destroying your life, maybe the problem isn't me. There was a long pause. Then Brandon's voice turned ugly. I know you're behind this media campaign. I know you're feeding stories to reporters, turning people against me. Prove it. And that pathetic loser you've been parading around. Do you really think anyone believes you're actually interested in him? He's a nobody, Tessa. A middle-aged IT drone who peaked in high school. I felt my jaw clench, but Tessa just smiled and winked at me. Max is twice the man you'll ever be, she said calmly. He's honest, loyal, and he doesn't need to abuse his power to feel important. You're making a mistake, Brandon snarled. Both of you. I have resources, connections. I can make your lives very difficult. Is that a threat, Brandon? Because threatening your estranged wife during divorce proceedings isn't very smart, especially when she's recording the conversation. The line went dead. Tessa looked at her phone and laughed. He's panicking, she said. When men like Brandon panic, they make mistakes. Big ones. She was right. The mistake came 2 days later, when Brandon showed up at my office. I was working late, trying to finish a system upgrade that had been delayed by all the drama in my personal life, when Brandon Chase walked into my cubicle like he owned the place. Which, considering the building was owned by his company's biggest client, he practically did. We need to talk, he said without preamble. I looked up from my computer, taking in his appearance. Gone was the polished CEO from the country club. This Brandon looked haggard, desperate, like a man watching his empire crumble. I'm busy, I said, turning back to my screen. I said we need to talk. His voice was harder now, with an edge of threat. I saved my work and swiveled my chair to face him. All right, Brandon, talk. He glanced around the empty office, then leaned against my desk, trying to project casual confidence. You're in over your head, Harper. You think you understand the game you're playing, but you don't. What game is that? The game where you and my wife try to destroy my life because you can't handle the fact that your wife chose a better man. I laughed. A better man? Brandon, you're a predator who uses his position to coerce employees into sleeping with him. That's not better. That's pathetic. His face flushed red. Julia came to me. She wanted what I could give her. Success, status, a real future, not some dead-end existence with a loser who fixes computers for a living. If Julia wanted to leave me, she could have asked for a divorce, I said calmly. Instead, she chose to lie and cheat and humiliate me, just like you chose to betray your wife. Tessa doesn't care about our marriage. She cares about my money. Really, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she cares about justice and truth, concepts you might want to look up sometime. Brandon straightened up, his mask of civility finally slipping completely. You want truth? Here's truth. You're nothing. You're a nobody who got lucky when a woman way out of your league felt sorry for you. But Tessa's using you just like Julia used you. The difference is, when this is over, Tessa will disappear with half my money and you'll be alone with nothing. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll have my dignity. Can you say the same? That's when he snapped. Brandon grabbed the front of my shirt and hauled me out of my chair, his face inches from mine. You think you're so smart, don't you? You and your little revenge plot. But I know things about you, Harper. I know about your gambling problem in college. I know about the money you borrowed from your parents that you never paid back. I know about the DUI you got expunged from your record. I stared at him, genuinely confused. What are you talking about? I had you investigated, you pathetic loser. I know all your dirty secrets. Brandon showed up at my office, convinced he'd found dirt on me, ranting about a gambling problem, debts to my parents, even a DUI. When I started laughing and told him he'd investigated the wrong Max Harper, his face went from smug to murderous in seconds. He grabbed my shirt and threatened to destroy me, but before he could swing, Pete appeared in the doorway with two of his biggest regulars behind him. Brandon took one look at them, released my shirt, and backed off. Pete cheerfully warned him that if he ever came near me again, our next conversation would happen in a parking lot. After Brandon fled, Pete admitted Tessa had called him, anticipating her husband might try something stupid. I called her that night to say thank you, and she warned me that Patricia Whitmore's article was dropping in the morning. The article was brutal. 6 former employees described Brandon's harassment, quid pro quo, arrangements, and retaliation. Julia was named as his current protege, complete with details about promotions funded by company money and jewelry bought on the corporate card. Former board members piled on, talking about his lack of ethics and terrible judgment. By the emergency shareholders meeting 3 days later, Brandon was already bleeding credibility. We watched from the gallery as he tried to blame everything on a vindictive attack by his estranged wife and her companion. That died fast when the board confronted him with hard evidence of misused funds. Hotel rooms, jewelry, personal expenses disguised as business. In less than an hour, they fired him for cause, voided his golden parachute, and yanked his stock options. 20 years of empire building disappeared in 20 minutes. Outside, Tessa slipped her hand into mine and said she felt free for the first time in 20 years. I told her it felt like justice. That night, over dinner downtown, the conversation shifted from revenge to something quieter. We talked about what came next, divorces, clean slates, and whether we wanted to be part of each other's new lives. When I told her I did, that I knew enough about her to want more, that she was brave, loyal, funny, and made me want to be better, she took my hand and said she'd like to see where this went to, once it wasn't about revenge anymore. We were just settling into that new, hopeful feeling when a commotion at the entrance shattered it. I turned, and there was Julia, drunk and unsteady, eyes locked on us like we were prey she'd finally cornered. Julia staggered into the restaurant, drunk and wild-eyed, yelling, "There they are, the happy couple, the homewreckers." Every conversation stopped. Phones came out. She called Tessa my whore, screamed that we'd destroyed her life, and tried to blame everything on my supposed lack of ambition. Tessa calmly sliced her fantasy apart, telling her Brandon hadn't returned her calls, that he was already out with a younger employee. Watching the truth hit Julia was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. She grabbed a wine glass and hurled it at Tessa. It shattered against the wall as people screamed and staff rushed in. By the time the police walked her out in handcuffs, she was shrieking that we'd regret all of this. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Outside, under the cool night air, Tessa just shrugged and said we should find dessert somewhere else. When I asked if she thought we'd regret any of it, she said no. She'd spent 20 years regretting not standing up for herself. She wasn't about to regret finally doing it, even if it started as revenge. Sometimes you have to burn down the old life to make room for a new one, she said. The next day, Brandon's secret harassment attempt in my office stopped being secret. The security cameras I'd helped install had caught everything, the grabbing, the threats, the lies. With that footage and witness statements, his lawyer folded fast and offered a mutual non-interference agreement. No charges from us, no contact from him for 5 years. His invincibility disappeared the moment someone else finally held power over him. 3 months later, both divorces were final. Julia got no alimony and walked away with just enough to rent a small place and a receptionist job to match. Brandon lost half his assets, his reputation, and his career, downgraded to a smaller consulting gig in another state. Tessa and I moved in together. She opened a new art gallery. I joined a tech startup and started building things instead of patching other people's messes. We spent evenings on our deck, talking about how it all might have gone if we'd never uncovered the affair, and always coming back to the same conclusion. We probably would have found out eventually, and we probably would have found each other too. In the end, the real revenge wasn't Julia's drunken meltdown or Brandon's fall from grace. It was this: my self-respect back, a clean life, and a woman beside me who actually shared my values. That was the part Julia never understood. I didn't need power, or titles, or status. I just needed this, and getting it was the sweetest revenge of all.